My name is Sarah. I'm 32 years old, and for the longest time, I believed that marriage meant partnership, love, and respect. When I married Daniel, I thought I was building a life where I would finally feel secure. But reality has a way of turning dreams into lessons, and in my case, the lesson came wrapped in humiliation, betrayal, and laughter at my expense. I live in a house that is technically mine as much as it is Daniel's, but some days it doesn't feel like it. My mother-in-law, Joyce, has her way of making me feel like a guest in my own home, and Daniel often takes her side. Add his younger sister, Megan, into the mix, a 22-year-old who still treats life like a game, and you'll get the picture. I'm the outsider. The responsible one. The woman who cooks, cleans, organizes, and sacrifices, while they sit back and act like the world revolves around them. And yet, despite the unequal weight of responsibility, I bore it all without complaint. I told myself, Sarah, this is what good wives do. This is what makes a family strong. But that day, everything changed. It was a Saturday morning, one of those rare days when Daniel wasn't working overtime. I woke up earlier than anyone, as usual. I made breakfast, laid the table neatly, and even polished the cutlery because Joyce always commented on how I lacked attention to detail. By the time everyone stumbled downstairs, the smell of coffee and fresh pancakes filled the kitchen. I was carrying the last plate to the table when my foot slipped on a patch of water near the sink. I lost my balance, and in what felt like slow motion, I went crashing down. The plate flew from my hands, shattering on the tiled floor. My knees banged against the ground, and pain shot up my legs. For a second, I was stunned, struggling to catch my breath. And then, I heard it. Laughter. Not just a chuckle or a nervous giggle, but full-blown, unapologetic laughter. Daniel was leaning against the doorway, smirking like I was the punchline of some cruel joke. Joyce had her hand over her mouth, but I could see her shoulders shaking. Megan actually clapped her hands like it was a comedy show. Wow, Sarah, Megan snorted. You fall more gracefully than a ballerina. Daniel added, maybe next time you should watch where you're going instead of fussing over plates like it's the Olympics. Joyce, with her ever-condescending tone, chimed in, honestly, Sarah, you should be more careful. You're always so dramatic. I sat there on the cold floor, my palms pressed against the broken shards, my cheeks burning hotter than fire. They didn't even bother to help me up. They just laughed. Do you know what it feels like to be invisible in your own pain? To cry silently, not because you've been physically hurt, but because the people you love, the people who are supposed to love you back, don't care enough to offer you a hand. In that moment, I wasn't just Sarah, the wife, or Sarah, the daughter-in-law. I was Sarah, the joke. I stood up on my own, my knees throbbing, my pride shattered. I picked up the broken plate, ignoring the small cut on my palm, and dumped the pieces into the trash. My chest was heavy, my throat dry, but I forced myself to stay silent. I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me cry. Breakfast continued as if nothing had happened. They ate the food I prepared, sipping the coffee I brewed, sitting at the table I had set, and they didn't even glance my way. That was the moment something shifted deep inside me. I realized their laughter wasn't just about the fall. It was about everything. Every sacrifice I had made for them meant nothing. Every hour I spent cleaning, cooking, saving money, or putting my own dreams aside had made me into someone they didn't respect. Someone they thought they could mock without consequence. That morning I fell. But I didn't just fall on the floor. I fell out of love with the illusion I had built around my marriage. I fell out of patience with Joyce's petty criticisms and Megan's cruel remarks. I fell out of denial. And as I quietly cleared the table, an ember began to burn inside me. It was small, faint, but undeniable. I didn't know what form it would take yet, but I knew one thing for certain. They would regret laughing at me. After that humiliating Saturday morning, life in the house went back to its usual rhythm, at least for them. For me, nothing was the same. I still went about my chores, still smiled faintly when Daniel came home, still nodded politely at Joyce's constant comments, and still tolerated Megan's entitled demands. But inside, something in me had cracked. Every word they spoke, every laugh that didn't include me, every reminder of my place in this house, it all dug deeper into the wound they had left behind. I started to notice things more clearly. Things I had overlooked before because I was too busy trying to keep the peace. Like the car. Daniel and his family treated that silver sedan like it was their lifeline, because it was. Daniel used it for work, Joyce for her doctor's appointments, Megan for her endless shopping sprees. Even the neighbors knew the car as the family's. But here's the twist, it wasn't theirs. It was mine. I had bought that car before marrying Daniel. It was under my name, my account, my paperwork. Back then, I thought nothing of it. We're family now, I had told myself, what's mine is theirs. And for years, I let them treat it like community property, never once reminding them of the truth. But after that day, when they laughed at my fall, I couldn't ignore the irony anymore. The very people who thought I was worthless relied on something that belonged solely to me. They couldn't go a single day without it, yet they had the audacity to mock me, dismiss me, and act as if I contributed nothing to this household. That realization hit me like a spark, igniting the ember inside me into something brighter. I remember one afternoon vividly. Daniel had forgotten his work folder and called me frantically from the office, asking me to bring it to him. "And hurry, Sarah," he said sharply. "I don't want to look bad in front of my boss." So I drove the car to his office, folder on the passenger seat, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. As I handed him the file, he barely looked at me. No thank you, no acknowledgement. He just muttered, "Finally," and walked away. That same evening, Megan barged into the kitchen. "Sarah, I need the car tomorrow. Don't even think about planning anything, I've already called dibs." Like I was some chauffeur. And Joyce? She had the audacity to lecture me about responsibility when she asked me to drive her to her friend's house one morning. "You really should learn to manage your time better," she scolded as if I was her employee. Each demand, each command, each disregard for my efforts, it all built up inside me. They depended on me, yet they looked down on me. They relied on me, yet they laughed at me. They needed me more than they realized. That thought became my secret weapon. I began observing them more closely. Daniel had no backup plan if he couldn't get to work. His office was far, and public transportation wasn't reliable. Megan strutted around like a queen, but she didn't even know how to drive legally. She had always used my car under my insurance. Joyce had health issues that made walking long distances nearly impossible. Piece by piece, their dependence revealed itself like a puzzle falling into place. And all the while, they were oblivious. To them, I was still just Sarah, the quiet, submissive woman who could be ignored. But they didn't see the shift. They didn't notice the silence growing heavier. They didn't realize that behind my forced smile, I was cataloging their every weakness. The day they laughed at me when I fell was the day they pushed me over an invisible edge. Now, every giggle, every mocking glance, every careless word was fuel. And as I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, I knew. One day soon, they would understand. They would learn the cost of humiliating me. And when that day came, I wouldn't need to raise my voice or slam a door or cry for their attention. I would do it with silence, with precision, with one simple decision that would throw their perfect little lives into chaos. I just had to wait for the right moment. It's strange how humiliation lingers. You can forgive words, you can forget small mistakes, but humiliation? It clings to you like a stain you can't wash away. Weeks passed since the day I fell in the kitchen, but the memory replayed in my head every time I glanced at Daniel, Joyce, or Megan. And what made it worse? They never apologized. Not once. In their eyes, it wasn't even worth acknowledging. But fate has a cruel sense of timing. It was Megan's birthday, a Saturday evening, and the whole house was buzzing with preparations. Megan wanted a party, no, demanded one. Balloons, decorations, food, cake, music. And of course, it fell on me to plan and execute it all. Daniel shrugged when I asked if he'd help. Joyce waved me off when I mentioned the cost. Megan pranced around, barking orders, acting like a celebrity. By the time the guests arrived, I was exhausted. I had cooked for hours, decorated until my hands were sore, and cleaned every corner of the house. Yet when the party began, I may as well have been invisible. The living room filled with Megan's friends, laughter echoing through the walls. Music thumped, glasses clinked, and I stood quietly in the kitchen, wiping down already clean counters just to keep myself occupied. And then it happened. One of Megan's friends, a tall, smug-looking guy, wandered into the kitchen. He smirked when he saw me. "Oh, you must be the maid." Before I could even respond, Megan appeared behind him, laughing so hard she nearly doubled over. "Oh my God, you're spot on. Sarah basically is the maid. She's been running around all day, doing everything. She lives for this stuff." Her words sliced through me like glass. The guy chuckled, raising his glass in mock salute. "Well, cheers to the hardest working maid I've ever seen." I felt my throat tighten, my chest constrict. I wanted to scream, to throw the dishcloth in Megan's face, to tell her exactly what I thought of her cruelty. But before I could, Joyce joined in. "You know, Sarah really does fuss too much. She should learn to relax, but then again, maybe this is all she's good at." The laughter that followed, Megan's, her friends, even Joyce's, drowned out everything else. And then I saw Daniel in the doorway, not stopping them, not defending me, just smirking as if agreeing with every word. That was my breaking point. I turned, walked into the bathroom, locked the door, and finally let the tears flow. My reflection in the mirror stared back at me, broken yet burning with a fire I had never seen before. This wasn't just about one fall in the kitchen anymore. This was about years of disrespect, years of sacrifice that went unnoticed, years of giving without receiving. I had bent myself into a shadow just to make them comfortable, and in return, they had made me the punchline of their jokes. As I wiped my tears, I whispered to myself, never again. That night, when the party was over and everyone was drunk on laughter and wine, I sat awake in the living room. The car keys lay on the coffee table, glinting under the dim lamp. My eyes lingered on them, my mind racing. They thought I was their maid, their joke, their invisible servant. But tomorrow, they would realize just how much they needed me. And I would be gone. The morning after Megan's party, the house was a mess, balloons half deflated, cups scattered across the living room, faint traces of spilled wine staining the carpet. Everyone was still asleep, sprawled in their bedrooms, while I sat silently at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee cooling in my hands. My eyes drifted toward the window, where the car sat in the driveway like a gleaming silver lifeline. Their lifeline. And it was mine to take. I didn't tell anyone what I was about to do. I didn't argue, I didn't shout, I didn't throw accusations. No, I knew that my silence was sharper than any confrontation. Words could be twisted, but actions were undeniable. After breakfast, which I deliberately did not cook for them, I slipped into the bedroom, retrieved the folder with the car's documents, and quietly tucked it into my bag. Walking out to the driveway, I felt a strange calm settle over me. My hands didn't shake when I unlocked the car. My heart didn't pound as I slid into the driver's seat. In fact, for the first time in a long while, I felt in control. The drive to the dealership was short. The salesman greeted me with a wide smile, not knowing that the car I was handing over carried more than just miles and metal. It carried years of sacrifice, years of unacknowledged effort, years of suppressed anger. "Are you sure you want to sell it?" he asked, flipping through the paperwork. I met his gaze and nodded firmly. Yes, absolutely sure. The process was surprisingly swift. Within a couple of hours, the deal was finalized, and I walked out with a check in my hand. A check that wasn't just money, it was freedom. It was proof that I wasn't powerless, that I wasn't just the invisible maid they thought I was. As I walked down the street, the autumn wind brushing against my face, I thought about the look that would spread across their faces when they realized the car was gone. The panic in Daniel's eyes when he couldn't get to work. Megan's fury when she had no ride to meet her friends. Joyce's helplessness when she had no way to reach her appointments. For years, they had underestimated me, dismissed me, laughed at me. Now they would learn that I was the one they depended on all along. And the best part? They wouldn't even see it coming. When I returned home later that day, they were still asleep. The driveway was empty, the silver car gone, and none of them had noticed yet. I placed the folded check neatly inside my bedside drawer and went about my evening as if nothing had changed. But deep inside, everything had changed. Tomorrow would be the beginning of their chaos. And for once, I would be watching. The next morning, I woke before everyone else, as usual. But unlike all the other mornings, I didn't rush to make breakfast or sweep the floor. Instead, I sat quietly at the dining table with a cup of tea, waiting for the storm to come. It didn't take long. First, it was Daniel. He came downstairs in his usual hurry, tie crooked, muttering about a meeting. He grabbed his briefcase, kissed the air near my cheek without even looking at me, and stormed toward the front door. Seconds later, I heard it, silence. Then footsteps pounding back inside. Sarah. His voice thundered through the hallway. Where's the car? Did you move it? I looked up from my tea, feigning confusion. What do you mean? The car's not in the driveway. His face flushed red, frustration twisting his features. Did you park it somewhere else? Did you loan it out? I shrugged, keeping my tone calm. No. Why would I? He stared at me bewildered before pulling his phone out. He called Megan, then Joyce, demanding answers. Neither of them knew anything. The panic in his voice grew with each unanswered question. Then came Megan. She stormed into the kitchen, hair messy, eyeliner smudged, her voice shrill with outrage. Sarah, what the hell did you do with the car? I need it today. I have plans. Joyce followed, clutching her robe tighter around her. This isn't funny, Sarah. I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. That car is my only way there. And, just like that, the house erupted. Accusations flew like daggers. Megan blamed Daniel. Daniel snapped at Megan. Joyce scolded them both, and all the while, I sat quietly, sipping my tea, my face neutral, my heart steady. The car they relied on, the car they took for granted, the car they mocked me over, gone. By noon, the tension was unbearable. Daniel called the police to report the car stolen. I almost laughed when he described it as our car. Ours. If only he knew the truth. If only he realized it had never been theirs to begin with. When the officer came to take the report, I stood silently in the background, fighting to keep a straight face. The officer asked Daniel if the car was under his name. Daniel hesitated, then turned to me. Sarah, it's under your name, right? The officer raised an eyebrow. So technically, it belongs to your wife? Daniel's jaw clenched. He muttered, yes. The irony nearly made me choke on my laughter. For the first time, I saw a flicker of realization cross his face. He looked at me differently, as if seeing me not as the maid, not as the background figure, but as the owner of something vital. But by then, it was too late. The dealership already had the car. The check already lay safely in my drawer. And the power had already shifted silently, irrevocably, into my hands. Watching their panic, their helplessness, their world unravel without the car, it was sweeter than any apology they could have ever given me. They thought they could laugh at me when I fell. But now? Now it was my turn to watch them stumble. The days that followed were nothing short of delicious chaos. Daniel scrambled to arrange carpools with colleagues, often coming home late, frustrated and exhausted. Megan sulked like a child, whining endlessly about missed shopping trips and canceled plans. Joyce, ever the martyr, guilt-tripped everyone about her appointments, acting as if the world had personally conspired against her. And me? I watched it all with quiet satisfaction. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one running around, bending over backward to meet their needs. They were the ones scrambling, improvising, suffering in ways they had never imagined. The irony was too rich to ignore. For so long, they treated me like a servant, like someone who existed only to make their lives easier. They laughed when I stumbled, mocked when I sacrificed, and ignored when I cried. But the moment I took away the one thing they truly depended on, their world crumbled. It wasn't about the car. Not really. It was about power. About reminding them that I wasn't invisible, that my efforts mattered, that I held far more control in their lives than they cared to admit. One evening, Daniel finally confronted me. His voice was quieter than I expected, almost nervous. "Sarah," he said, standing in the doorway of our bedroom, "did you sell the car?" I looked up from my book, my face calm, my heart steady. "Yes." The silence that followed was heavy. For once, Daniel didn't know what to say. His bravado, his arrogance, his casual dismissals, all gone. He looked at me not as the background figure he could ignore, but as the woman who had just pulled the ground out from under him. "Why?" he finally asked, his voice cracking ever so slightly. I closed my book gently, meeting his gaze with steady eyes. "Because you all laughed when I fell. Because you all forgot that everything I do for this family comes at a cost. And because you needed a reminder of just how much you depend on me." His lips parted, but no words came. He just stood there, staring, as if the weight of my words had finally hit him. For once, I didn't explain further. I didn't justify, didn't beg for understanding, didn't cry for forgiveness. I simply turned off the lamp, rolled onto my side, and closed my eyes. The next morning, the house was unusually quiet. No mocking comments, no dismissive smirks, no careless laughter. They tiptoed around me, unsure of what I might do next. And that was the sweetest part of all, because I had taught them a lesson they would never forget. I wasn't weak. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't the maid, the joke, or the background character in their story. I was the one who held the power. And they would never laugh at me again.